you're living or thinking that you're living your life one way or that your life is one way, and like that, it can turn. And then when somebody gives you something and you can't pay them back, it's very humbling. And it fills you to the point where you want to be able to do that for somebody as well.
It always felt like I had to do something to earn love, and I had to do something to feel like I was worthy of love.
And I think I was just scared of how would I ever be a good parent? How would I love someone the way they deserve to be loved? How would I raise them?
When I was little, all I knew of love was like yelling or fights or arguments. So with Daniel and our marriage, it's something to like fully enjoy, and that wasn't necessarily my definition of love before.
How do I fit into this, and what's my place? And then how do I ultimately react to this and continue to live my life when I'm feeling sad and frustrated and not full of love? And realizing that that's okay, that I don't have to be this perfect package.
Before I started following Jesus, I thought that's what life was about. I thought it was all of the individual and just the pursuit of yourself.
I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to have my hopes so high that it would hurt even more. But it wasn't until I found Mosaic that I knew that he loves me no matter what. And I actually felt it. I actually felt Jesus love me.
That moment was so overwhelming for me. This flood of emotion, and our life has never been the same.
It just felt like home when I came to Mosaic.
We shouldn't do life alone.
Especially in a city like Los Angeles, it's so hard to find people that you could trust to do life with.
Stepping into community and making that choice to be a part of it can become your home.
You don't have to have it all together to be loved.
So we're not made to be here on our own.
If love isn't the most powerful thing in the world, I don't know what it is.
And it's dangerous. Love is so dangerous.
It brings completely opposite worlds together and is only something that God could do. Did that answer the question?
Great.
Okay.
Happy Easter, Mosaic. Will you stand and worship with us?
Your love, it keeps pulling us up, pulling us back to where you are. And it's your love, your peace, your joy that fills our heart. And when you move like rain, you fall straight through us like a flood. Your voice, it speaks in the sound like fire to our bones. Oh, come on! Lead us back your freedom for my heart. The price you paid to give eternal life. The limits of your grace go past the heavens. The universe could not contain your love. Oh, oh, how great is your love, my soul surrenders to who you are and all you've done. And I lift my praises to you, my Savior, for who you are and all you've done. Passion moved your heart to save my soul. The universe declares your love for us. The splendor of your glory came from heaven. The proof of God pursuing us with love. How great is your love, my soul surrenders to who you are and all you've done. I lift my praises to you, my Savior, for who you are and all you've done. How great is your love, my soul surrenders to who you are and all you've done. I lift my praises to you, my Savior, for who you are and all you've done. Who you are and all you've done. We all lift our voices as we sing, Maker of the heavens. Maker of the heavens, there is none like you. My soul longs for you, and I believe. Holy is your name, the most beautiful. None can stand against my King. Let's sing this out. Maker of the heavens, there is none like you. My soul longs for you, and I believe. Holy is your name, the most beautiful. None can stand against my King. Maker of the heavens, there is none like you. My soul longs for you, and I believe. Oh, like the sun, ever true, shining over all. He is Almighty God, Elohim, maker of the earth. He is the Lord of heaven's King, God of this world. His kingdom stands above every power, every living soul. His love is like the sun, ever true, shining over all. He is Almighty God, Elohim, maker of the earth. He is the Lord of hosts, heaven's King, God of endless worth. His kingdom stands above every power, every living soul. His love is like the sun, ever true, shining over all. He is Almighty God, Elohim, maker of the earth. He is the Lord of hosts, heaven's King, God of endless worth. His kingdom stands above every power, every living soul. His love is like the sun, ever true, shining over
Hey, come on, Mosaic. Hey. Come on now. Hey, happy Easter.
It's so good.
Man, isn't this fun? Yeah,
I'm so
that's so
excited.
good. What's up, girl? This is my lovely wife, Rebecca. Doesn't she
Thank
look
you.
good?
It's nice meeting you all. I'm out of breath.
I
But
feel you.
wow, that was good.
That was so
so
good.
good.
So good. Where do we
Okay.
go from here?
I don't know. What do you do from here? We're speechless.
Wow.
Something powerful is happening in this room.
Come
do you
on.
feel it?
Come
do you
on.
feel the presence of God in here? So good.
Man, I'm just so excited just because of the fact that this room is filled and packed with humans, that we have a team that has been working hard to make a space for you. They've been like sacrificing hours because they wanted you to encounter the God that we have encountered. And so we're just so glad that you're here. My name is Joe. I'm our Hollywood campus, or the pastor at our Hollywood campus here. Rebecca, what do you do here? What's
I'm the
your
kids
role?
pastor here.
Come
Yay,
on, girl.
Go the kids. The kids are the
Incredible.
future, people.
It's
So
amazing.
we want you to meet each other.
Yeah.
So turn to your left and right and say high five, meet someone new, and you can take a seat.
And then you go ahead and have a seat. And as our connection team comes forward, we're gonna transition into a time to receive our offering. But before we do, I just want to us to, as a church, a tribe together, to keep a tradition going that has been going on for thousands of years. See, when Jesus rose out of the grave, and right after that moment, people who had come to encounter him and believe that he was who he said he was, they would encounter other followers of Christ, and they would look at each other and say, he is risen. And the other one would say, he is risen indeed. And it would be this declaration that still today, the God who left that grave is still living today. So Mosaic, we got to keep the tradition going. So on the count of three, I'm going to say, he is risen. And then you say, he is risen indeed. You with me? He is risen. He is risen. Beautiful. This is why we are here. And as we give together, it's so important that we remember that's why we give. That we give not for our own benefit, not so God would move just in our life and make our life better, but we actually give because we believe that what we're doing together is a powerful movement that can bring faith, hope, and love to every corner of the earth. And this is why we give. In Hebrews chapter 13, it says these words, through Jesus, therefore let us continually offer to God a sacrifice of praise, the fruit of lips that openly profess his name, and do not forget to do good and to share with others, for with such sacrifices God is pleased. I love that. And do not forget to do good and to share with others, for with such sacrifices God is pleased. Do you want to please God with your life? That wasn't a rhetorical question. Like, if you're, maybe there's no, are you out there and you want to please God with your life? See, this passage is so powerful because it's giving us the insight that one of the greatest ways that we can please God is how we serve each other, that how we give on behalf of one another. And then when we do this, when we realize that all that God has poured into our lives, all that he's blessed us with, all that he's entrusted us with, it was not so that our lives would be better, it's so that we could help other people's lives be better. And I was reminded of this reality recently this week because we have a friend who, Angela and Jerome Davis, who are incredible people, and Angela works at Soul Cycle, and she's a teacher there, but I also think she's a torturer is really her job title. And just this week, I was in her class, and I'll never forget this. She was talking to everybody just about what's going on in her family. And she was telling a story about her 11-year-old son, Edward. And she was asking Edward, like, we've been going to Mosaic the last few months. What do you love about Mosaic? And 11-year-old Edward is the coolest 11-year-old I've ever met in my entire life. Like, I want to go back in time and be Edward when I was 11. His clothes are cool. He talks cool. He plays on a soccer team, and he's a brother. That's how you know you're cool, right? And I love what she said. She was recounting the story. Edward, why do you love Mosaic? And he said, Mom, you remember how Pop would talk about those big trees? And with the biggest trees always had the deepest roots. And he'd always talk about, you need to be around these big trees because they go deep and the roots go deep. He said, when I walk into Mosaic, I feel like I've walked into a big tree that has deep roots. He's 11, y'all. I'm like, can we just be best friends? I love it that Edward did not talk about, you know what I love about Mosaic is how cool they are. I love that he didn't say, you know what I love about Mosaic is the music is incredible. You know what I love about Mosaic is they buy me free food. No, what he said is I love that there's roots that tell me that there's a story that's being had here. There's roots that tell me that there was people that gave way before I ever stepped into this place. And when we give together generously and sacrificially, when we tithe together, what we do is we plant roots deep that maybe they start in Hollywood, but they stretch out to Venice. Maybe they start in Hollywood, but they go to South Pasadena. Maybe it starts in Hollywood, but it goes to Orange County. Maybe it starts in Hollywood and we go to Mexico City. And maybe, just maybe, if we together on an Easter Sunday will plant some roots deep, that it might even spread all the way across to Tokyo one day, to Beijing one day, because we are convinced that when we connect our lives to Jesus, the shift happens. That it's no longer about what I get, but it's about what I get to give. So today, let's give generously. Let's give sacrificially. You can go ahead and pass the buckets. And you can go online. Go to mosaic.org/give. You can give that way. If you have our app, you can download that, and there's opportunities that you can go in there and give through the app. That there's so many opportunities and ways for us as a church to just do everything we can to create more space, more room for people that are searching for God. And then as the buckets are being passed, we put together just some exciting things coming up within our community we want to let you know about. We call it Church News. Check it out.
Welcome to Mosaic.
We're so glad you're here. The buckets are probably being passed right now, and if you're wondering why we give to make room for more people. So in case you missed it, here are a few ways to give. You can text Mosaic to 77977. You can give online at mosaic.org/give, or you can give through the Mosaic app.
We have a lot going on here at Mosaic, and we want you to stay connected. You could download our brand new Mosaic app, follow us on Instagram, the handles are on the screen, and the best way to get connected is to meet at the Next Step area after the gathering.
Crew nights are back, and they start this Thursday at 7:30. They're a great way to get plugged in here at Community at Mosaic, and crews are big community groups that are spread across Los Angeles.
To find a crew near you, go to mosaic.org/crew. See you there.
Hey, what's up? I'm LJ.
And I'm Mariah, and we're from Mosaic MSC, which is our worship band here at Mosaic. We are so excited to announce that April 9th, we'll be playing in LA at the Greek Theater with the Outcry Tour. We'll be playing with Bethel and Elevation. We're so excited for you guys to come out and support, so be there April 9th. Greek Theater starts at 7 p.m.
Tickets are almost sold out, so go to mosaic.org/outcry for tickets.
Hey guys, we got new times here at our Hollywood campus. Starting next week, we've got 9:30, 11, 12:30, 7, and 8:30.
And we do this every week, so we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.
Every week.
Every week.
Not just Easter Sunday.
Not just Easter
All
Sunday.
right, see you later.
All right, see you later. We got one last song, so let's stand.
He has walked upon the open waters. The sea was calm, but just a word from him. He has fought the raging war of sorrow. When he speaks, a whisper shouts within. I see a miracle in an empty grave. The one we thought was dead has come to life again. I see a miracle in every chain you break. The power of heaven roaring within me. He will lift the anxious and the weary, calling home the burdened and the lost. And I am proof that you delight in second chances. I am proof of the power in the cross. I see a miracle in an empty grave. The one we thought was dead has come to life again. I see a miracle in every chain you break. The power of heaven roaring within me. Oh, full of you, rose triumphant. Oh, full of you are. Oh, full of you came back for me. Oh, full of, oh, full of, oh, full of, my name is worthy. Oh, full of you come. Oh, full of your scars crying mercy. Oh, full Jesus Christ, passion is his name. He traded all his glory for our shame. And like he rose in freedom from the ashes, we will rise from death to life again. I see a miracle in an empty grave. The one we thought was dead has come to life again. I see a miracle in
morning. How you guys doing today? Happy Easter. And he is risen. Now, you may be here today and you're a guest. Maybe you have a friend who was more persuasive than you thought. And you don't even know if God exists. You're pretty sure he doesn't. You're not really convinced that Jesus is who he claimed to be. And I just want you to know you are so welcome here. We're so glad you're here. And we just hope you feel at home and realize that you don't have to agree with us to be with us, that we've really gone past that. You don't have to believe to belong. We want this to be your family, this to be your home. And if God doesn't exist, you're just going to meet some of the best people in the world. And if God does exist, it just could change your life, wreck it forever. So, either way, it's a good thing, And we're glad you're here. So I'm going to pray. And by the way, I know we look out of our minds because we believe in God, but we are. Because that's what being alive does. It just drives you into a state of madness. Because you just see beauty and wonder, see optimism and hope, see joy in life everywhere, even when life is filled with sorrow and pain and suffering. It's maddening. It's a beautiful madness. I hope that somehow you capture it. Father, thank you so much for this beautiful day, for this Easter Sunday, for this incredulous declaration that Jesus Christ stepped into human history. God himself took on flesh and blood, walked among us, was crucified, and rose from the dead. And we understand the story is crazy, but that's just who you are, God. So I pray that each person here would have an overwhelming sense that they matter, that you see them, that you long for them to know your love, and that Jesus is your name. We thank you. We pray in your name, Jesus. Amen. Amen. You can have a seat. Even as we begin, I want to welcome our Orange County campus. First Sunday launch on Easter. Can we just give them a hand and welcome them? So good to have you guys. And we want to welcome our brand new Venice Beach campus. Come on, give it up for Venice Beach, Santa Monica area. And last but not least, we want to welcome everyone at the Rialto Theater in South Pasadena. Come on, just give it up for them. So good. And of course, welcome to Hollywood. Yeah, come on, give it up for yourself. You're going to get it. So good. This is always an incredibly surreal moment for me, to realize I actually believe this, that I believe the most incredulous story that has ever been told. I mean, I understand, because inside of my brain, there's an unbeliever that believes. There's a cynic that's convinced. We are here because about 2,000 years ago, a man named Jesus walked this earth. And he declared that he was God in flesh and blood. He walked among us, lived a sinless, perfect, beautiful life. And even his beginning, starting at a virgin birth, was only a foreshadowing of the extraordinary end of the story, not at a cross, but with an empty grave. I understand that this is the most incredulous story you've ever had to grapple with. But I also know that we're all suckers for a good love story. And in fact, if you've ever made a fool of yourself, it was because of love. I don't have to know you and know that you've made a fool of yourself because you were in love. Have you ever noticed how love changes us? It drives us. In fact, I'm convinced if some alien species ever comes and writes the story of humanity, even the parts of it that we can't explain, they'll go, it was this maddening desire to be loved. It was all for love. Or maybe all because of the absence of it. So if God were actually trying to speak to us, to get our attention, if God were trying to arrest us so that we would stop in a moment and be aware of his reality, it would have to be a love story, wouldn't it? You ever longed for a love that you knew you would never have? Or wondered why you were not loved when you should have been? For me, it's really connected to my father, or should I say the absence of one. I never knew my dad, or I never knew my father. I knew about him a little bit, but not too much. I'm from El Salvador, and I know that my mom was 16 when she met this professor who was 26, that he spoke, 10, 12 languages. That they fell in love and got married, and she was married when she was 16, and the marriage was over by the time she was 19. I know when she was pregnant with me, the marriage ended, and so my grandparents were there for the first few years, but I never knew my dad, and I always wanted to know him. Even when I became an adult, I still felt like a child when it came to what my soul longed for in relationship to my own father. And I would always ask my mom if I could find him, but she would just never give me any information. And I would go to my grandparents, but they were clearly committed to a vow of silence. And I don't know if you know Latino families, but we don't tell our secrets. In fact, one time my grandfather talked to my wife, Kim, and said, "Do you know what the key is to a long marriage?" And Kim said, "What?" He said, "Don't tell anyone your secrets." It's not the key. Not the key, all right? So I never knew who my father was, and after he passed away, I discovered he was always, at times, even just a few miles from where I was. I could have met him, I could have known him, and I realized there was something in my soul that longed to know his love, or maybe to understand why, or if I was loved. But then years and years later, decades later, in a conversation, I was told, I think by my mom, that I actually met my dad. But I didn't remember it. I didn't know it. Because you were in the lobby of a hotel in San Salvador. You and your brother, you were small, maybe 5, 6 years old, I don't know. And a man walked up to us and knelt down, and he introduced himself. He said, "Hi, I'm your father." And my mom said, you looked so confused, and you looked at him, and you said to him, "No, you can't be our father, because if you are our father, you would live with us." And when my mom heard that, she saw him, and she swept us away and took us away so that we wouldn't know who he was. In that moment, I had a glimpse of someone I've always longed to know. But I can't pull that moment up. I'm trying to remember it, but I don't know if I remember the memory or I just remember other people's memories and retelling of the story. I've tried to remember any details of his face or what it looked like to look into his eyes, or was there any warmth, or was there something there that I've longed for? See, I know this about you. Because in this, you and me are the same. We spend our entire lives searching for love that we can't find. We spend our entire lives trying to make sense of this desperate need to be loved and this overwhelming fear of the love itself. And then there's God. And if human love is elusive enough, complex enough, how much more difficult it is to understand the love of God. Which helps me understand why God chose this particular language, because people will ask me, why this? Why would God step into human history? Why would God take on the form of us? Why would God allow himself to be brutalized and tortured and crucified? Why would God die on our behalf? Why would God do it like this? And then it makes sense to me, because the language of love is God's language. And the highest expression of love is sacrifice. So there's this moment after the death of Jesus when all of his followers are in disarray. All their hope is lost. There were no moments of retelling the story, looking for a different ending. They watched Jesus die. And with the death of Jesus was the death of all their hope. And it's the third day. It was this day. It was Sunday. And in John chapter 20, beginning in verse 1, it says, "Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple." And by the way, the other disciple is actually John, who writes this gospel. Now, he always names everybody else, Peter, Thomas, but he doesn't name himself. He just calls himself the other disciple. Well, he has a more specific designation. Here it is. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved. I love that about John. I'm not going to say who I am. I will remain nameless, but I'm the one that Jesus loved. And of course, we know that Jesus loved everyone. He didn't have favorites, but I was the one who Jesus loved. And they all knew that John was the one that Jesus loved. And said, they have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him. I think this is the most honest and telling moment. The women come back, and they say, Jesus is missing. His body is gone. We don't know who took him. Not one of them had the thought, he rose from the dead. See, no one expected that. No one could imagine that. They were like us. That would be an incredulous proposition that someone would conquer death and come to life. So they assumed someone stole him. These are the people who believed in Jesus most. So Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter. I love that. I mean, I don't know why that's in the text. I don't know how significant that is, but John's writing it, so he said, I'm going to throw in this little detail. Peter may be the rock, but I'm the wind. So, the other disciple outran Peter, the one whom Jesus loved, and reached the tomb first. No competition. It reminded me of how much I just get frustrated with the LA Marathon. Thousands of people running across our city, making it impossible for people to come to church. And I always have to be careful because the president of the LA Marathon is a part of our community. She's awesome. We love the marathon. And I'm reading this, I'm realizing that wasn't the first running event on Sunday. Here it is. It's Peter and John running to the tomb. So I guess the marathon has a biblical basis. They were running, and the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent over and looked in at the strips of linen lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came along behind him and went straight into the tomb. I love that. And if you know anything about Peter, Peter's the incredibly impetuous one. He's the guy that always gets it wrong. He says whatever he's thinking, wrong. He does the wrong thing, oops. You know, he's like, but sometimes it works in his favor. Jesus, tell me to walk in the water and I will. But he does. The soldier comes to arrest Jesus. Peter, who's a fisherman, picks up a sword, cuts off the guy's ear. Jesus had to pick up the ear and go, Peter, Peter, Peter. Just because you feel it doesn't mean you need to do it. And, I think Peter missed. I think Peter was trying to cut off his head. That would have been like epic. Peter, Peter, Peter. So Peter, he doesn't stop. He runs straight into the tomb. I think this thing just broke. Can I have a handheld? Thank you. I'm going to leave this with you. Except I'm stuck. Trapped. This is not happening. Thank you so much. I think I was somewhere. So Peter runs right in and goes straight into the tomb. And I think this is the distinction sometimes between us. Some of us may have gotten there first, but we didn't go in. See, some of you heard about God early on. Some of you heard about Jesus early on. Some of you have believed to a degree, and you're right at the edge of the tomb, but you didn't go in. You never stepped into the power of the resurrection of what Jesus offers you. But you've seen someone else go in, and it's changed their life, and it's made you curious. It says he saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. The cloth was still lying in its place, separate from the linen. Finally, the other disciple, who had reached the tomb first, you know, the one whom Jesus loved most, also went inside. And then he writes this simple summary. He saw and believed. They still did not understand from Scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. Then the disciples went back to where they were staying, And so they walked into the tomb, and they're trying to put all the pieces together, and all the words that Jesus has spoken must have been rushing through their minds, and they believed, but there's still so much that was still yet to be understood. And I think that so many times we're in this state of transition where we believe what we know, and we believe what we can, but we know there's something still missing. It's as if we're standing on the edge, but we haven't crossed the other side. And it may be that you've walked right up to the line of faith, but you've never crossed over, stepped into that empty tomb. You ever notice that you're a lot smarter after the event than before, or even during? See, John is writing not in the middle of the event. He's writing looking back on this moment. And he writes the Gospel of John, the story of Jesus, understanding now completely who Jesus is and why he has come. And so just before this moment, the disciple whom Jesus loved writes these words in John 13, verse 1. It says, "It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and to go to his Father." That's a fancy way of saying he was about to die. It says, "Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end." I love that. John can now look and realize that everything Jesus did, it was all for love. It all made sense now because it would have been so hard to understand Jesus' thinking, his strategy, his motive. What was his intention? What was Jesus thinking by letting this happen to him? And he goes, oh, it was all for love. Because he loved them to the end. He loved us to the very end. I, the disciple whom Jesus loved, knows that when Jesus should have stopped loving us, he did not stop loving us. And so when we betrayed him, he kept on loving us. And when we walked away from him, he kept on loving us. And yes, even those who betrayed him, he kept on loving them. And even those who tortured him and wounded him, even those who shamed him and humiliated him, he kept on loving them. And even those who crucified him, he kept on loving them. You see, John came to know that the end of love is endless. You see, if the story of Jesus ended at the crucifixion, then we would have known that Jesus loved them to the very end. But the story of Jesus did not end at the cross. The story of Jesus did not end at his death. And so even though John can say he loved us to the very end, what he came to realize is what he thought was the end was just the beginning. What he thought was the last page was just the next page of a better story. He loved them to the end, but that end was endless. And see, I want you to realize that sometimes the end of our story is just the beginning of God's. But he sometimes has to wait for us to finish writing our own story, because sometimes we're so stubborn that we just keep trying to write our story, even though we know we desperately need something that we cannot find for ourselves. And God wants to start writing the story of your life once you've hit the very end of your story without him. And he loved them to the very end. Everything Jesus did was an expression of God's love for us. That's why it's called the Passion. So those hours around the death of Jesus, those hours where he suffered most, those hours are known as the Passion, because if you want to know what someone is passionate about, look at what they're willing to suffer for. And Jesus was passionate about you. He loved you without condition. His love was relentless and powerful. His love had such determination that not even death and suffering would stop him from loving you. So John then becomes the writer of love. He becomes the one who begins to unwrap love for us because he saw love face to face. And so he writes in 1 John chapter 4, verses 7 on down, "Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever loves does not know God, because God is love." So he wants us to know that love is God's singular motive. And I think this is important, and I don't want to make something sound so simplistic. But I want you to understand that a lot of people have been speaking on God's behalf and giving you the wrong story about God. It's amazing how many religions and how many churches have been started over the generations, and the entire narrative has been about guilt and shame and judgment and condemnation. And we keep attributing that to God, but that's not God's story for us. That's just our reflection of our own hearts toward each other. See what John is telling us, and let me tell you who God is. God is the source of all love, for love comes from God, and God is love. And this is why this is so profound. It means that God in his essence is love, so everything God creates is an act of love. So the entire universe is created out of love. If the universe is ever expanding, it's because love is limitless. And whether it's the cosmos or the solar system, whether it's black holes or supernovas, whether it's stars or moons or suns, everything is an extension of God's love. And that's why when you look at creation, you feel this overwhelming sense of peace. Because the universe declares his love for you. And you should not think it's an accident that somehow you are on a planet drifting in the middle of darkness that has the perfect atmosphere and environment for you to live. Because the entire universe exists for one purpose, to declare God's infinite, unending, relentless love towards you. So every time you inhale, you're breathing in his love for you. Love comes from God, and God is love. And this is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world. He's saying this is the language of God. This is why God did it this way. This is why Jesus stepped into human history. This is why he took on flesh and blood. This is why he walked among us. This is why he allowed himself to become the sacrifice for us. Because he knew we could not understand him, so God spoke in the language of humanity and declared his love through his sacrifice for us. We're going to spend our entire lives searching for love. I'm telling you. From the first day of human history to its very last, our story will be a story of searching for love. And it'll be your story. And you will not be able to explain even how love has made a fool of you, yet you still foolishly search for love. And the strange thing is that not only do you and I need to be loved, we strangely need someone to want our love. See, it's not enough for us just to be loved by someone. We desperately want someone to want us to love them in return. And yet we search for love and we run from God. Let me tell you, it is insanity to search for love and run from God. And John tells us, everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God, because God is love. And when you've entered into God, you've entered into love. And if you don't know love, you don't know God. You certainly don't know who God is. And then he goes on to say, this is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. Now, one of the things you're going to notice if you spend any time in the scriptures is that the words life and love come together all the time. It's the moment you start talking about life, you begin to read about love. And the moment you start reading about love, you begin reading about life. And John unwraps this. He goes a little further in this. He tells us in 1 John chapter 3, verse 14 says, we know that we have passed from death to life. I love the imagery. We've passed from death to life because we love each other. This is the proof that we're alive, is love. Anyone who does not love remains in death. Now that's kind of ominous. See, most of us think that we live and then we die. And actually what the scripture is saying is, no, it's actually the other way around. You're already dead and you need to come to life. But we wouldn't agree with that, really. Because we don't think we're dead. We think we're alive. Or at least we think we exist. Have you ever gone to a museum to look at art with a bougie friend? You know, you did not want to be there, but you didn't want to say that you were not that refined. Oh, yes, let's go to the Getty, right? I've been to so many museums with my wife, Kim. She loves museums. But then it's hard to get me out. I just get drawn in by the art. But, you know, there's some artists you go, I get that. Looks like a guy. Okay. There's a house, a lake, and a canoe. Looks like a canoe. Right? I even get Monet. It's a blurry canoe. Right? It's a house in motion. But you ever get to the abstract art section? You know, the art that was developed after we were using hallucinogenics and LSD and, the art that came later. Have you ever looked at like abstract art, late Picasso's? If it's a Picasso, you know it's good. Because it's Picasso. That's how you know, oh, there's his name. It's awesome. Right? But if it's not Picasso, you're like, I don't know. Like, where's the nose? How come she has like 3 ears, And all the eyes are on one side. It's like we're not flounders. And right, have you ever looked at an abstract art piece and you thought to yourself, I could do that. I think I did that when I was 11. My mom put it on the refrigerator, and because she was short-sighted, she did not frame it and sell it to a museum and for $20 million. And then have you ever looked at a piece of art and thought, yeah, why is it in here? But you got your bougie friend who starts explaining to you why this is art, why Jackson Pollock is different than you at 11. And they go on and on and on about fractals and spatial intelligence. And you're like, nah, I don't think so. See, is it possible that you don't have the eyes to see the beauty right in front of you? Or maybe you don't know how to look at something and see what it really is. See, when we look at ourselves, and go, yeah, I'm alive. But God looks at you and goes, I've seen life. Doesn't look like that. You ever thought, yeah, this is living? Bam. Okay. I'm alive. I can't remember last night, but man, I'm living it up. And God's like, yeah, I've seen life. It doesn't look like that. You ever just try to fill your life with stuff, with fame, with success, with possessions, with people, and go, oh, I'm alive. And then God looks at you and goes, yeah, you're not. I've seen life. I know what life looks like. And at best, you're existing. But if we're going to be really honest with each other, you're dead. See, love moves us from death to life. And anyone who does not love remains in death. And I know this about all of us. You know when you feel most alive? When you're in love. You ever had that moment, even if it's just a moment? Maybe even if you were wrong about it, a moment. You know what's amazing? Even if you were wrong about a moment, when you thought you were in love, it was epic. Right? It's only later you project hate on that person and go, I never liked him, I never liked her. Right? That's the truth, right? Because you have to project all that negative on them, because otherwise you're a fool. And you were. You were a fool for love. But you got to just own it. You got to go, that moment was amazing. That moment where I thought I was in love, that moment where I thought I found that love I've been searching for all my life. Have you ever known a moment of love that made just life so rich? Okay, there's some of you here who are married, and you need to be nodding. Yes, sweetie, like every moment of my life is like that. And some of you were dating until just right now. Your lack of response has ended that relationship. You know what it is that love brings us to life. Because if you're not in love, you're not in life. Because you cannot live without love. And what Jesus is trying to tell us is that he moves us into life through his love. This love that we've all been searching for. This love that for many of us has been so temporary. This love that has all these sporadic ups and downs, moments of exhilaration and then isolation. God says, I can end that for you. I can give you the love that lasts forever. Because I've loved you with an everlasting love. See, love is God's singular motive. And love is how God moves us from death to life. But I want you to know the most beautiful thing is that love actually conquers all fear. It's love that actually moves you to freedom. Remember that disciple, the nameless one, the one whom Jesus loved? The one who got there first? The one who almost walked in but waited because he was paralyzed by his fear. So he couldn't step in.
But Peter just ran right through. See, I think it's that Peter had messed up so many times, he knew that Jesus would always forgive him if he got it wrong. John was afraid to make a mistake. See, I think there's so many of us that are just existing because we're just living in fear. We're living with the fear of death, the fear of failure, the fear of rejection. We're just paralyzed by fear. We have so many words for it now: anxiety, stress. In fact, our society, our culture is being crushed by the weight of fear. We call them phobias, but a phobia is just a fancy word for fear. And this is what John says, the one who was afraid to go in 1 John chapter 4, verse 18. It says, there is no fear in love. That's how you can know you're in love, because there's no fear. That's how you can know you've actually experienced the love of Jesus, because you're no longer fear. So there's the great paradox in the scriptures. It says that we're only supposed to fear God, but perfect love casts out all fear. So when you actually enter into a relationship with God, that fear of God actually expels all the fear out of you, because God is the one person whose only intention toward you is love. It says, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. See, I think there's some of you are afraid of God because you think God's all about punishment. You're afraid of trusting Jesus with your life because you think God is all about judgment and condemnation. You're afraid to trust God and open yourself to him because you think that God's going to look at you and see all your brokenness and reject you. But I want you to know he sees you exactly as you are and loves you more than you will ever be loved. Because perfect love casts out all fear. I mean, think about John writing this after Jesus has been crucified and raised from the dead. Let me tell you, you should be glad I'm not God. Because if I came for you, to love you, forgive you, give you freedom and life, and if I lived this beautiful, sinless, perfect life in front of you, and then you decide, even when you're in my inner circle, to betray me with a kiss, then walk away from me and deny me, then allow those who hated me to take me away and humiliate me and strip me of my clothes and my dignity, to spit on my face, to pull out my beard, to put a crown of thorns on my head and mock me as a king, and then to beat me senselessly and to whip me until my flesh is falling off my bones, and then to make me carry the instrument of my own death up a hill, and then nail me to a cross and mock me while I died, and then I rose from the dead. You would not be happy I'm back. You would not be celebrating my resurrection. You would only know fear. I might let you live just so that you could be afraid. But I digress. See, we underestimate what Jesus did. On the third day, he rose from the dead. And that is not the miracle that should make you run to him. What should make you run to him is that he rose from the dead. He rose with no anger, no condemnation, no judgment, no wrath. He rose from the dead to offer forgiveness and compassion and mercy. That he rose from the dead, and it was all for love. This is why John could write these words. Perfect love casts out all fear. There's no fear in love, because John had stepped into that love. And that fear that once kept him from walking into an empty tomb, now let him walk away from an empty life. You ever wondered why the movement of Jesus is more reflected by a cross than an empty tomb? It's because it's really hard to make swag around an empty tomb. You can carve wooden crosses and forge gold crosses. And in fact, I grew up Roman Catholic, and so I knew the crucifix. And the first time I walked into a Christian church that wasn't Catholic, I saw this empty cross, and I was confused. And I looked at the girl that I went with, because for me, it was just a date. You know? Come on, let's be real. And I looked at her and I said, they forgot Jesus. She goes, what? And I said, the cross, it's empty. They forgot Jesus. I'm thinking, I gotta let them know this is embarrassing for them. Some maintenance guy is gonna lose his job. He's polishing Jesus, forgot to put him back on the cross. And this girl looked at me and knew I was completely sincere. And she looked at me and she goes, oh, no. He's not there. He has risen. And it was the first time I ever heard that. The first time anyone ever said it to me, and the first time I knew someone actually believed it. See, it's really hard to create something tangible and physical when it's just an empty grave. But you can wear a cross around your neck and it will not change your life. But when you step into the resurrection, it changes everything. And I wonder if on this Easter, what you need to do more than anything is to cross that line of faith and say, I get it, Jesus, it's all for love. I'm tired of running from you and searching for love. I get it, it's all for love. And maybe right now it's time for you just to open up your life to Jesus, because here's the crazy thing about love and the crazy thing about God is that God is all powerful, but you cannot force anyone to love you. And so he created you in his image. He created you with freedom. He created you with a choice and with a will. And so even though God loves you with his relentless, unconditional love, he will never force you to receive his love. He will not force love on you. He leaves it to you to choose. Jesus gave his life for you. Now he's waiting for you to give your life to him. That's how love works. Because it was all for love. It was all for love. It was all for love. It was all for you. I just want you to bow your heads to me just for a moment. If you're here right now and it finally makes sense, it was all for love. That's why Jesus came. That's why he died. That's why he rose from the dead and loved us even more. And if you're here right now and you're ready to receive that love, you're ready to receive that life that only Jesus can give you, I want you to pray a very simple prayer. It's just one sentence. Jesus, I give you my life. That's it. There's so much more you and God need to talk about. That conversation is going to last forever. But right now, this is where it starts. I want you to cross that line of faith. I want you to not just stay outside the tomb looking, and I want you to step in and step into the resurrection right now. Just pray this prayer. Jesus, I give you my life right now. Just whisper to him. Jesus, I give you my life right now. Jesus, I give you my life. Whether you're here in Hollywood or outside in the tent, whether you're in South Pasadena or in Venice or in Orange County, right now, wherever you are right now, just whisper this prayer. Jesus, I give you my life. And if that's your prayer, on this Easter, I want you to make a declaration that love has moved you from death to life, from darkness to light. I want you to do something a little bit unusual today. I want you to grab your cell phone. I want you to pull it out. If you just prayed this prayer, Jesus, I give you my life. If you just cross that line of faith right now, I want you to turn your flashlight on and I want you to hold your phone up and just let that light in this darkness right now be your declaration that you've given your life to Jesus. Beautiful. Wonderful. Anyone else right now? If that's your declaration, Jesus, I give you my life. Wonderful. Whole cluster of you over there. Right now, so beautiful. Right now, Jesus, I give you my life. Just turn on your light and just hold it up. Jesus, I give you my life. That's right. We can applaud them right now. Anyone else? This is so beautiful. Jesus, I give you my life. This is it. This is your moment. Jesus, I give you my life. They're still coming on. Turn it on right now. Jesus, I give you my life. So beautiful. Out in the tent, turn on your lights. Venice, right now, turn on your lights. South Pasadena, turn on your lights. Orange County, right now, just turn on your lights. Jesus, I give you my life, wherever you are. All right, let's just all celebrate together. Just give them a round of applause. Father, we thank you so much For every light that has come on in the darkness, for every life that has been born in this moment, for every person that's crossed that line of faith, has stepped into your love. And I pray, God, you would just wrap them up in your love. Let them know that they belong to you, that you will never leave them or abandon them. Let them know they belong to the love of Jesus and that his love has been poured into them and that they are alive, they're alive, they're alive. Because when Jesus came, when Jesus died, when Jesus rose from the dead, it was all for love. This is our prayer. In Jesus' name, amen. Can we just thank God so much for what he's doing in our lives today? We're going to sing one last song. But I want to know that you leave here today with this. If you forget everything else, if someone asks you, what's Easter all about? Go, it's all for love. Can you help me understand why Jesus came? All for love. If they want to know, well, what's the church about? It's all for love. What's Mosaic about? It's all for love. What's humanity supposed to be about? We're supposed to be all for love. Because love is the most powerful force in the world. And when Jesus died on the cross, he showed us that love was more powerful than death. Love was more powerful than hate. Love was more powerful than despair. Love is the most powerful force in the world. And when you open your life to Jesus, you are now a part of the most powerful movement that humanity has ever known. You're alive, you're alive, you're alive, because it was all for love.
Triumphant, all for love you are. Come on, can we lift our voices? All for love you came back for me. All for love, all for love, all for love. My name is worthy. All for love you've come. All for love your skies kind mercy. All for love, all for love, all for love you most triumphant. All for love you all for love you came back for me. All for love, all for love. I see a miracle in an empty grave. The one we thought was dead has come to life for me. I see a miracle in every chain you break. The power of heaven roaring within me. I see a miracle. Oh, I see a miracle. Oh, I see a miracle.
Come on now. Mosaic, how good was that? Hey, can we together thank Pastor Erwin for giving such a phenomenal talk here this morning? That was special. Man, just to see lights all across the room. Well, it was beautiful. This is why we're here. If that was you here today and you turned your light on, you opened up your soul to the person of Jesus and made that declaration today, what we want to do is we want to give you a gift. We got a Bible here. It's got a sticker on it that says you belong here. Because we want you to know that every time when you say yes to God, you also say yes to his people. So welcome home. We're so glad that you're here. Can we have one more to just thank God for everybody that turned their light on? That was so special. Man. So before you leave, when you exit at the back area, there's an area called Next Step. Our team will be there. This Bible is for you. They want to give it as a gift. And then we also want to help you get plugged in and connected. So at that Next Step area, there's sections for our crews, which are groups all around the city where people meet together in coffee shops and restaurants, just going through the scriptures together. There's also an area to serve. There's an area for Growth Track. So we want to encourage you, if you want to get plugged in, go to Next Step. That's the best place to do that. Man, what an incredible Easter Sunday. Now we got to live it out. We got to be the people. When they ask, why do you do what you do? We say we did it all for love. Hey, we love you. We'll see you next Sunday.